Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show on a boy, that was an interesting game out there. Let's leave it to the chat room to kind of explain what we saw. Dylan Tickborn says the Jets were lucky to get a win tonight. Aaron Cosson, I believe, agrees with him. Sucks that Paul gets to keep his job. Dude is washed. We should probably get into that, because the interesting part about this, I was dealing with text messages and messages on different social media platforms all night about people thinking that Paul Maurice was, right on the verge of losing his job. I'm not one of those people. I don't think that it was anywhere close, and I don't think tonight's win was by any means a coach-saving win. But I mean, people can disagree with that if they want. Schmidtface says the Jets were unlucky to lose to St. Louis, Edmonton, Vancouver. It all evens out. I think we're going to be hearing a little bit of that, and I think this is an interesting game because it kind of has enough for everybody. All those people who have been pointing at there being a problem with the Jets, I don't think tonight's game erases that for those people at all. And all the people who are saying the Jets just need to kind of break the dam and then they're going to start going in for them, I think this game gave them hope there. So I in a way, I don't think that a game like this changes anyone's minds. What I will say about this is I don't think that was a lucky win for the Jets. I honestly think, if you think about it, that is Jets hockey right there. That is exactly what we've come to know of the Winnipeg Jets, not just this year, but for the last number of years. I mean, tell me if you've heard this one before. The Jets get outshot by a team that is all over them, outpossessed. All the fancy stats go in their way, that deserve to win a meter. Needle is breaking off in the direction of the other team. And Connor Hellebuyck comes in with, like the White Knight, rides in to save the day, pulls it off, and the Jets capitalize on some opportunistic scoring and come back and win the game. I mean, this is a script that plays out over and over and over and over again for the Winnipeg Jets. So in the end, I think I was a little bit surprised to see it, and we'll touch on that when we get into the show a little bit deeper, especially after Ken arrives. But I mean, the idea of how fragile this team has been in this 5-game losing streak, and the fact that they had every opportunity to crack with the 2 quick goals at the beginning of the game. I mean, there's got to be some value in that. But I mean, we really shouldn't have expected that losing streak to end any other way than a very Winnipeg Jets win, because surviving off Connor Hellebuyck and capitalizing on opportunistic scoring while playing a game that, really looks like the other team deserved to win. That, ladies and gentlemen, is basically what we know of as Winnipeg Jets hockey, and it's been that way for a long time. Going to get a little bit deeper into that stuff after Ken gets here, but I wanted to address something before Ken does get here. Let's talk about the Lucic hit on Lucic-DeMelo, and maybe even more kind of juicy is the reaction from our Hockey Night in Canada panel to that. I noticed on Twitter, and I mean, I was watching it, and as soon as I saw it happen, I was thinking, okay, people are going to want to talk about this in the chat room afterwards, and rightfully so. But I know that someone on Twitter, let me see if I can find him here, had said that, here we go. Sorry, I haven't here, and I'm sure you guys didn't show up to see me talking about this on Twitter. But someone had talked to Hustler about the response from both Friedge and Kevin Bieksa that, it was a little bit of Lucic-DeMelo's fault. And so I think you guys probably want to get my take on this, and maybe Ken's when it shows up. No, I don't think that was Lucic-DeMelo's fault at all. Here's the deal. And they touched on it. And this was the important part of that. That hit almost never gets finished in today's NHL. Yes, 20 years ago, and Kevin Bieksa, who's an old school hockey player, when he played the game, you didn't turn on a guy coming in like that, especially a guy like Milan Lucic, because that guy's going to finish that hit, and you're putting yourself in a dangerous spot. Did Lucic-DeMelo put himself in a dangerous spot? Yes, he did. But that's not the way this league works anymore. The idea that this is a league where the player is expected to protect themselves first against, potentially crushing hits like that, even if they're illegal hits, that's gone. That's gone the way of, the rolling caveman on the wheel kind of thing. That's not the way this works anymore. So players like Dylan DeMelo, they touched on this in the panel. Dylan DeMelo isn't expecting that hit because no one in the league finishes that hit anymore. Guys do every once in a while, but it doesn't happen that often. So Dylan DeMelo is basically getting an unexpected hit into the boards like that. Now, that's where my opinion is. The way the league is right now, these players, it's getting to be a no-hit league, and a lot of people are going to be upset with that. I've got my own feelings about it. I wish there was more hitting in the National Hockey League. I wish it was a little bit rougher of a sport. I understand the direction it's going in. But this is where the league is now. So there's almost like an unspoken code between the players. The code has evolved from being protect yourself or I'm going to wipe you out to the code being I don't expect you to hit, so don't hit me in this situation. People will have heard my opinion on similar things like this before. And this is the one thing that I will say. There's going to be a lot of Jets fans out there right now who are saying they agree with me. A lot of you, are old school hockey fans, and I've got a bunch of buddies who are like that, who will not agree with me. But a lot of you would agree with me, but then would tell me that the Svechnikov hit was an entirely different hit. I didn't think it was different at all. I thought it was the same hit. I just thought Lucic's was more destructive. But beyond that, this is the reason why, and I'm going to bring this up, and it may set this chat room on fire, and I can tell you it makes people angry because my brother-in-law, who's enjoying the Took concert tonight, was a loyal Kenny and Renny watcher, and he stopped watching Kenny and Renny because he was so angry with our opinions on this. But if you go back to the Mark Scheifele hit on Jake Evans, it's the exact same reason that I feel that Dylan DeMelo was not at fault for this. In this league now, there's not an expectation that players will finish that check. So it becomes a dangerous hit because you're violating the player code by making that hit. That, and I'm not going to speak for Ken Wiebe, but I've talked with him enough that I think he's on board with this. But that I did not like the Scheifele hit because Jake Evans isn't expecting him to hit him like that because players don't finish that hit like that in the NHL anymore. So it's an unexpected hit. So to me, in my mind, the hit on Dylan DeMelo is a dirty hit for the same reason that the Mark Scheifele hit on Jake Evans is a dirty hit. I know a lot of you out there are going to say that I'm comparing apples to oranges in that. Maybe there's some truth to that, but I'm just trying to give, just trying to color why I landed on this. And we're going to move beyond that right now, although I may have, again, set fire to the chat room. I haven't looked. But let's get into talking about the game here tonight. My man Ken Wiebe is ready to rock here tonight, and you know what that means. It's time for the best intro music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, my friend, I want to welcome you from the United States of America. I don't know if you moved full time for a long time, especially on this side of the border here. But I wanted to just tell you, people noticed it. I kind of, in the time that you've been gone, I got to hit the buffet up. And it feels good. I'm going to tell you, I got to do this more often. I see why you do this so often now. Just sit down, grab a plate, and start shoveling food onto it. This is a good way to do this. So I don't know if I'm going to let you do it as much. I'm going to elbow my way into the buffet every once in a while, a little more often, and get this done here. But Kenny, how are you doing, my man? And what'd you think of that game?
Yeah, certainly very interesting, that's for sure. I was a little nervous. Your audio was a little low when you started, but you got her fired right back up. So
there we go.
The buffet, yes, well done starting off at the buffet. Caught a little bit of it. You're welcome to talk for me. I won't always agree, but in this case, as you know, I don't think the NHL does a good enough job of laying down the law when it comes to hits from behind. I haven't liked it at all. I think that was definitely worth a 5-minute major. In terms of whether it's going to be suspension, that I'm not sure about. There's been some debate over whether there was, somebody sent me a DM saying that Lucic also put his elbow in and kind of finished the hit. That's not what I saw on the first couple of looks at it, but I want to go back again and give it another look. But this is not a turn. I understand Lucic was trying to say that this was turning at the last. This was not turning at the last second. This was on the numbers from the last 2 strides in. I don't like the hit at all. I think it's definitely a 5-minute major and a game misconduct. And I don't like those hits at all. I think that for all the talk about headshots, which are important to get out of the game, I want more of the hits from behind out of the game. So
yeah. Kenny, you and I come from the era of, and remind me the name of the college player that got hit from behind and was left a quadriplegic after getting hit from behind into the boards and breaking his neck. Do you remember who that was?
He
worked in hockey for years and actually passed away a couple of years ago. But that shook the hockey world back in like the late 80s, early 90s, and that started up the whole thing. Like, I remember being in hockey at the time, and it went from being like, you could hit a guy from behind to being like, if you made any contact from behind, it was an automatic penalty and kicked out of the game, whether it was against the boards or in the middle of the ice. It feels to me like we were the generation kind of raised on whatever you do, don't hit a guy from behind. But it's starting to feel in the NHL like that's disappearing a little bit.
It is, and it needs to disappear completely, to be perfectly honest. It's just so dangerous. I mean, how many quadriplegics do you need to have before we figure out? I mean, there's a reason they put the stop sign on the back of the minor hockey jerseys. Don't hit the guy if you see his numbers. This is very simple. There you go, Craig. Thanks he's got it. Travis Roy was the player, I think.
Travis
Craig
Roy.
Zamzo.
There you go. Good job, Craig.
Thank you for nailing that
I got
down.
our chat's the best. Thank you.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and I'm sorry. We've had a lot on the go here. I am, for the folks who don't know, I am reporting live from the Fairfield Inn in Grand Forks, and Sean had a cameo from the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport yesterday. Before I go too far sideways here, Sean, big moment today. For the first time since the pandemic started, I did have my first COVID test at the airport.
Yours went better than mine?
Mine went better than yours. I paid for the quick rapid response and the rapid reaction. It was in my phone within about half an hour. I'm going to have to say I'm fortunate. I think earlier in the pandemic, the swab was we'd heard players talk about it as the brain tickler. That was not my experience, so I was happy for that. It was kind of like my COVID shot, or kind of like my vaccine shot. You're like, oh, it's over already? Oh, okay, great, super. Anyways, so we'll get to, we both had some viewing experiences that we'll get to later on, but let's just go back to the game.
Let's get into it. What did you see? What did you see?
First and foremost, I have, in terms of the viewing, I only watched the second period on TV. I had to rely on our good friends Paul Edmonds and Jamie Thomas. I had an issue trying to get connected with my NHL Live here in the States. It bumps you to the ESPN Plus.
ESPN?
Yeah.
You know what you do? You have to use your phone. I had the same problem. I was in the Columbus airport.
Okay,
we haven't figured out the bug at Sportsnet. We're supposed to have unfettered access, but you have to use your phone. For some reason that works. Laptop doesn't.
There we go. So I did listen, and the second period viewing was important, but I didn't see everything, but I do have a pretty good gauge on what has transpired here. What I'm going to say right out of the gate, to me, Sean, we talked about this via text message, as we often do. What you needed to see from the Jets today was a response, and I liked the measured response in the podium appearances. Today was not about a measured response. It was about a show people what you're made of. We know immediately, Sean, that was not the template the Jets are going to try to employ to win hockey games this year. That was not it. But you don't expect the template to be in full display when a team has lost 5 in a row and is playing for the third time in 4 days. You empty the tank, you show some resilience. This is not a template that is sustainable. Connor Hellebuyck had to stand on his head, essentially. And after the 2 early goals, guess what? The brick wall went up. And I love the fact that Connor Hellebuyck spoke so eloquently at the microphone and showed some fire and some maturity and said, you know what? He didn't go out and win the game 1-0, but what he did do was back up his words with an incredible performance. So
Yes.
to me, that was the most important. Paul Maurice said flat out, the goaltender was damn good. He wasn't about to critique he knew the Jets were not. Wasn't their game. They gave up a lot. Did they give up as much as they gave up in St. Paul? No, but they gave up too much. But at the same time, the fact that Jets didn't wilt. That's the only thing the Jets are going to take out of that game tonight in terms of what they want moving forward.
Pause right there, Kenny, because those are 2 big themes tonight that I wanted to address. But first, let's go to the Hellebuyck thing, because Hellebuyck does his, kind of Mark Messier moment, is what Kevin Bieksa called it.
Sure.
He said not quite that, but it's kind of like that. But for those of us in Winnipeg, we know it's not his Mark Messier moment, because he's done this time and time and time again. And we've talked about this on this program in the past, and I can tell you this. I've been on record with this saying I haven't liked this from Connor Hellebuyck in the past. Like, if you're the guy who's going to pull the Mark Messier and you don't win the game, and then you go out and you pull the Mark Messier again and you don't win that game, which we've seen from him in the past. He did it against Calgary in the playoffs. He did it against the St. Louis Blues. He said in this offseason, that the Jets are just that far away from being a dynasty. And these are like really, really big comments that we haven't seen them backed up, right? So I'm not necessarily, I think it starts to become a little bit meaningless when you're that guy who comes out and says, yeah, we're going to go get him tomorrow, right? When you've said that in the past and you haven't pulled it off. But I will say this, he backed it up today, right? And in a moment where the Jets had every reason to kind of bleed into your second point, the Jets, a fragile team these last 5 games, had every single reason to collapse in that game. And I think they kind of were off the start. And Connor Hellebuyck ended up being the backbone that kept that from happening. So Connor Hellebuyck came out, said that they were going to do that, and he did it. He went out and did it. The interesting part, though, about what you were talking about was like, this isn't the blueprint. That's the interesting part, Ken, because I know that the Jets have been trying to change, and I know what we've seen from them earlier this year has been different. But I said this before you hopped onto the chat. Like, this is the Jets blueprint, or it's the Jets old blueprint anyway. It's like survive off goaltending, pounce on opportunistic scoring, lose on the deserve to win a meter, and yet do this over and over and over again. And so, I mean, that to me is the big question that comes out of this, because I think coming out of this game, and I wanted you to address this, coming out of this game, if you're one of the Winnipeg Jets fans that's been frustrated with how they play, there's a lot of them calling for coach firings. There's a lot of them that say they don't like what they see. I think you walk away from this game and you're like, and they were saying it at the beginning of the chat, Ken, they lucked this out. They didn't deserve to win that game. What is it? So what? And there's a lot of other people who are saying we were just waiting for the dam to break. And it broke. They got 4 goals tonight, the scoring return. Where do you kind of fall on that? Like, yes, it wasn't the template that they wanted to get to, but did the template matter tonight, or did the only thing that mattered was to win that game and stop the slide?
Well, what mattered was to stop. Obviously, when a team has lost 5, the only thing that matters is the end result, but only if you're going to learn from what happened. And like, Paul Maurice wasn't interested in critiquing the win publicly, but everything that is on the tape is going to be on display on Monday's practice. I mean, there's no chance in hell the Jets are abandoning their previous template for what we saw today and said, you know what, screw it. Connor's going to take care of it. I know this is not what you're suggesting, but the Jets are not going to try to turn back the clock and say, let's leave it up to Connor and our offense let's just go to the go-go Jets. No, that's not what they're planning on doing. But they need to be better than they were today. These things even out, Sean. We know this. Even when you have a Vezina-style goaltender, things sort of seem to even out on those fronts. Jets might have deserved to beat the Oilers at the start of the stretch. Didn't deserve to win today. They lost one. They won one. One was in overtime. One was an overtime loss. One was a win in regulation, which the Jets needed. I mean, I think to me they got away with a few things for sure. But to me, for everyone saying, "Oh, the Jets have quit on Maurice," today is Exhibit A on how that is just not an accurate point. So, if the Jets had quit on Maurice, this game is 7-0 again, much like yesterday was 7-1. So, that's not to say the Jets have solved all their problems today. Penalty kill gave up another goal. 6 seconds in, they gave up a power play goal. That's got to get changed, and humongous missed opportunity here. Paul Maurice doesn't need to, nitpick the win, but we can. Back to the hit we were talking about. If a team gets a 5-minute major penalty, you need to score on those. You need to score at least one, if not two. Right? I mean, that's a situation where that's what the deterrent is. I had someone send me a DM too saying, "Oh, well, the Jets, how come Logan Stanley didn't fight Lucic? He should have fought him, and it didn't even matter if it was an instigator." I'm like, no, you can't do that. The Jets had lost 5 games in a row. You don't prove a point and say, "You can't do that, I'm going to fight you." No, the Jets needed the power play, even though they didn't score on it. You take a number, you take the license plate number, and you do something about it at a later date when your season is not hanging in the balance. With a loss today, the Jets would have fallen below the playoff line.
Well, they were in 10th before the win. They had already fallen below the playoff.
Oh, sorry,
line.
Yes, because the Colorado game was over. Sorry.
And all the teams around them would have had games in hand.
Right.
So it's like, even now they win and they jump from 10th all the way up to 3rd place because Nashville loses. But right. Dallas, who's on fire, is still just 2 points behind them with, I think, 2 games in hand. I think Colorado's 1 point behind them with 3 games in hand. Like where they are right now, it looks nice, right? But they've the one thing that we know the Winnipeg Jets have done with this 5-game losing streak is they've squandered their good start and they've put themselves smack dab in the middle of a battle right now. And sure. I guess that's the question right now. They're in this battle, so the Jets win tonight, and I can tell people are really excited, and Connor Hellebuyck did this, and everyone's yay and happy, and you got a good feeling going right now. But, maybe this is the question we have to attack next, because right now, the Minnesota Wild, they're going. The St. Louis Blues, they're doing fairly well. The Colorado Avalanche have won, I think, 6 of their last 7. The Dallas Stars, I think, have won 4 or 5 straight. All these teams are going, which leads to the question, the Winnipeg Jets, who are right in line with all those teams, did they correct the wobble tonight? And I don't know that we can say that because Ken, I don't know how I feel about this game. There was so much good in that game. And there was so much bad. Their start was terrible. Relying on Hellebuyck was terrible. Their first and their fourth penalty kills were atrocious. Their power play was horrible. Their third period, despite the fact that they win the game in that, they are dominated in that third period. But on the other side of things, their scoring wakes up. That first line rediscovers that, and people will argue about the way they played, but they recaptured that kind of opportunistic scoring there. Right. The Hellebuyck response tonight was phenomenal and really maybe all they needed to win this game. And their penalty kill, and someone touched on this on the panel. Oh, Elliott did. He said coming out in the second period, he thought the turning point in the game was the very beginning of that second period and how good the Jets penalty kill was to start that. So the first 6 seconds of the first penalty kill are terrible, but the second penalty kill may have switched the momentum in that game. The
right.
third penalty kill kept it going, but then that fourth penalty kill, I thought they were lucky to survive. So I just walk away from this game and there was so much good that, if you're a team that's fragile and you're like, we just got to win, you look at that and be like, there was a lot of good there, but there was so much bad there to be like, I don't know if this team has righted the wobble or they just cruised a really good goaltender tonight and made it through. The good thing for them is now they go and play one of the worst teams in the league, and if they can get past them, suddenly they've won 2 games, one of them against one of the top teams in the conference. Now you can build a little bit of confidence. Maybe now the Jets can get rolling. But that idea of like, what do you think we've seen from the Jets here? Keeping in mind that last season when they went on that really bad run, they won a couple, came out and said, okay, mission accomplished. We put that behind us, and then kind of fell into it. It wasn't a straight line out of being stuck in the mud. There was a little bit of moving forward, staying stuck, moving forward. How do you see the Jets coming out of this performance here tonight moving forward?
Well, I think they basically just played 5 of 6 on the road. I think that out of their last 8 games, they were played in 8 different time zones. So I'm not a big fan of the, emptying the tank. The tank was empty, but in this case, it's actually accurate. So the Jets will play Monday, and then they won't play until Friday. So by this weekend, we'll have a better idea if they're out of it or not. So you can't choose who's on your schedule. You got the struggling Arizona Coyotes and then the Devils team that's kind of been up and down a little bit, but they've had their moments. By the weekend, we'll know if this matters at all. Today it matters because it took the heat off for a couple of days for a team that had a lot of heat on it. So to me, sure, there's a lot of issues to sort through still, no doubt about that. You have to give credit where credit is due. Yes, the analytics probably weren't great on the Scheifele line today. But guess what? They scored 2 goals. For a team that had only scored 5 goals in 5 games, 2 goals from any line was going to be measured as a success. The fact that Kyle Connor, who had not scored in 4 games, or 5 games, I think it might have been, 5 games without a goal, 2 assists during that time. The fact that Kyle Connor scored 2 important goals, including the game winner, is important. And I know that people are joking about it on the chat room. Andrew Kopp hadn't scored in 13 games. The fact that he was out on the ice to kill, to protect the lead and got an empty netter, good for him. Who cares if it was an empty net goal? They count the same in terms of for a guy who's struggling. We've heard this before. Sometimes all it takes is an empty netter to get a guy going. So, he's not up there doing cartwheels, but when you haven't scored in a long time, you'll take him any way you can get him, whether it goes off your behind, off your skate, off your head, into an empty net. Who cares? The Jets have been struggling mightily, and they put up a 4 spot against a Vezina quality goaltender. Only 3 were against him. Guess what? There was battle. Paul Stastny's goal is a great example for the Winnipeg Jets. It doesn't look like much until you put it into slow motion. Markstrom pushes across and he's within a split second of covering the puck. Stastny powers through before he can get it covered. That's the extra effort that the Jets needed at a time when they were struggling to score goals. We'd heard all kinds of things about, Logan Stanley's just shooting blanks from the point. Well, what happened today? Shot from the point, it gets redirected by Svechnikov. Stastny gets to the puck first and scores. That's an important goal for the Jets. Svechnikov did not have a good game. We can get into this later on, but I just think there was a lot going on in the game. You have to tip your cap on a few things that are important for the Jets, but at the same time, how they respond when they go home. You can't, what I just said, 5 out of 6 on the road. You can't go home on Monday and say, well, we don't have any energy now to face the Coyotes. No, that doesn't matter. The Jets, if they want to be an elite team or even something other than a bubble team, if they want to be a true contender, there's no excuses for not being ready on Monday. They survived today. They got lucky in a lot of regards, but they also dug deep at a time when they could have rolled over. So kudos to that. But now, what do they do next, right? It's always going to be what happens next. So that's what we're going to find out. By the weekend, we'll know if the word that Connor Hellebuyck used, fragile, is still relevant. I don't think it will be relevant this week, but who knows?
You know what? A lot of people are saying it here. They thought it was Blake Wheeler's best game of the year. What'd you see? And you know what, Ken? Just give me a second. Start up with that. I'm going to be right back. Hey, I'm leaving the buffet wide open for you, but just take this for a second. I'll be right back.
Filling airtime, always what we do. Yeah, I mean, Blake Wheeler was, under fire. There's no doubt about that. It had not gone well. 4 assists in 14 games. It's been tough for the Jets captain. There's no doubt about that. He came up with 2 important points in this game, 2 good setups for Kyle Connor, and it's something that he can build on. I mean, is Blake Wheeler playing at the level he wants to be playing at? Probably not, but today was a step in that direction, an important step, even if it's a small step, because previously it had been a rough go. Paul Maurice talking about it in the post-game media address, that because of the way Kyle Connor has been playing, he has graduated into a full-fledged driver. And at the time, right now, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, I believe part of it is definitely related to COVID, but we're still learning about that on the fly. To me, it reminds me of, 15 years ago when we're dealing with concussions. We don't know what the long-term effects can be. It impacts every single person differently. So we're finding out different things, and we're finding it out about Wheeler. We're finding it out about Scheifele. For them, they can take a deep breath because they've found a way to get on the score sheet. They scored a couple of important goals, including the game winner, and now we'll see what happens. I mean, was their shot share sustainable for success? No, but I also don't judge them on one game on the end of a back-to-back and say it can never work again. Much like I'm also not saying it was bound to be a success today. It's different now. The Jets have different defensemen. So let's see what happens. I mean, I'm not advocating for this to be their full-time line, but give them another shot. If they play poorly, break it up. I mean, we know this is the fallback plan for Paul Maurice. It worked today in terms of the score. We'll see if it can be sustainable. And like I said, I don't judge it based on one day of a back-to-back. I mean, we're going to find out more during the week. So I did a lot of rambling about Wheeler. It was an important first step for him.
I'm going to weigh in, but
what did you think?
Well, first I've got to address these nasty rumors going on in the chat room of people suggesting that I have
the smallest bladder in the league, so Sean can't be in the conversation.
Exactly. First off, but they would be right to call me out if that was the case. But I'm telling you right now,
you're the camel.
Cast iron bladder Sean Reynolds would never leave his post for something like that. Why I did leave my post, Ken, is Mac Richter, a good friend who was at my wife's 40th birthday party. That was awesome to see him. He's going to be back for the Christmas party too. They're high school friends, but he was upset because he missed your entry music. And so while we can't cue up the music for Ken, I will say this. I went to go get the headband.
Send it to his email. Send it to his email, buddy.
Let's get back for some rock and music. Mac, you wanted some good music in the show. Here we go. It's a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Calling me a small-bladdered guy. I'm offended. I'm offended by our chat room, Ken. You know how I usually talk about our chat room being our secret sauce? Well, I'm mad. So I'm. You're gonna have to butter up the chat room.
I will, no problem. I can handle
that. About Sean Reynolds and his bladder is just completely.
Hey, buddy, hang on. So, like we've said, one of the things about the show is that we get to show them another side of you that people don't see on TV. So people can't assume to know what your bladder patterns are. So it's good of you to be able to share that with them because not everyone in our chat room has been friends since high school with you. One quick one because the importance of the chat room. We got to do, we like to give the shout outs. So, hang on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Come on.
Sorry.
My former Winkler Flyers teammate, Corey Dittmer, his son suited up for the Mighty Flyers today. So, Craig, thank you for letting us know. Craig is in Swan River, so he was I assume he was at the game tonight. Thank you for sharing that. Corey Dittmer, right-handed shot defenseman. Was a young up and comer when I was finishing my junior career in Winkler. Great human being, great family, and awesome for Carter there to make his debut tonight. So kudos to him.
Good stuff, Carter. Great job. Let's get back to what we were talking about before.
You were going to weigh in on Wheeler.
Let's do the Wheeler stuff. So I too thought that was his best game of the year. I thought he was engaged. I do think that there's a little bit of. I mean, I texted you before the game. And I think we were both extremely surprised, and maybe not surprised. There were people who were saying before this that that we could see it going in this direction. And I think from comments that we heard from Paul Maurice about that line, saying I could put that line together at any time, and they're going to score. I think that. We should have expected that to happen. But to me, Ken, it had a feeling of failing upward. Do you know what I mean? Like that we go and really all these problems started the game after Paul Maurice broke up that line that was going so good. Kyle Connor, PLD, and Svechnikov breaks up that line. They win that first game against the Oilers, and then everything kind of falls apart. And the whole idea was that like you're moving up Blake Wheeler to get it working, and my line that I use over and over again is why break something that works to fix something that's broken. It didn't make sense to me, and now everything seemed to be broken. So you understand Paul Maurice is going to go and he's going to look for solutions. But that, to be honest, I was surprised that was the solution at that stage. I was surprised that his idea was to go back, because to me it felt like Mark Scheifele's not going, Blake Wheeler's not going. So then let's strip PLD and Kyle Connor, who have been, the most dynamic pairing on this team, and throw that line back together. And I'll say this, like you were saying, the shot share, all those kind of things. I do think, okay, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to say this. I don't think it's a mirage, because one thing that I think those guys are phenomenal at is it doesn't take a lot of opportunity for Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, and Kyle Connor to put the puck in the back of the net. So they're the kind of line that can get owned for the evening and come out with a 3-1 at the end of the game. That's just how they are, because they're just so good at it. But I'll say this. I was thinking about this, Ken. The way they score, it's like a magic trick. It's like a sleight of hand, right? Do you know what I'm saying? I'll explain it. Like it's all about Kyle Connor kind of getting lost, right? Kyle Connor on that first goal, what does he do? He just disappears from the play, goes around the back of the net, gets lost. He's all by himself. Blake Wheeler chips the puck over to him. Boom, it's in the back of the net. That game-winning goal. Mark Scheifele comes in, he pushes the defenseman back, gets them on their heels, and it's the same play over and over. Suddenly, it's a back pass to Blake Wheeler, and then all of a sudden, the defense that are on their heels are having to move in and fill that vacuum that he's created. And then what does Kyle Connor do? He goes and gets lost in the shuffle. It's that whole sleight of hand thing. Look at this over here. And the danger is actually coming in over here, and then Kyle Connor's there, pass across. It's in the back of the net. That style of play, I honestly think that line is the best in the league at it. My issue with that, and maybe with that line altogether, is the shot share stuff is problematic. Yeah, they get away with it. I just don't think you get away with scoring those kind of goals in the playoffs. And maybe me bringing up playoffs right now is like the old Allen Iverson practice. We're talking practice here. Yeah, we're only a quarter of the way through the season. Maybe I shouldn't be concerned about what works and what doesn't work in the playoffs. But hasn't that kind of been the theme of this team this year, Ken, is that they're trying to establish a blueprint that works and that is going to be sustainable, and that they're going to build up and get stronger towards the playoffs? And isn't the idea of Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, and Kyle Connor playing that kind of game, and the Jets winning with them playing that kind of game, isn't that counter to the the blueprint this team would need to win?
Sean, it's like I said before, I'm fine with everything that you're saying, but this was never going to be a Picasso, as Claude Noel used to call it. That just wasn't going to be that way today. So let's see how they play during the week. Let's see how they play after 3 days in between games. The other part we should discuss, I mean, as the Jets were emptying their tank in 3 of 4, Flames were sitting around all week not playing. So I mean, that's a yes or that's a bonus and a curse in some ways in this game. They didn't give up a ton at 5-on-5 like has been the case all year long for the Calgary Flames. But at the same time, is this game different if the Flames are tired? Or is it different if they're playing every other game in rhythm? I mean, the best news is we'll get to find out on December 31st when they get back together in Calgary. So, no, I mean, I don't think that those guys are going to want to play the same type of game that they played tonight either. But all we've been doing is telling them to produce. So what did they do today? They produced. Yep. We're not here saying they dominated play or carried the play, but what they did do was do something the Jets had struggled to do. So they do get credit for that. So see what they do from there. This is one game. And I actually, in some ways, Paul Maurice was basically suggesting he should be applauded for kind of withstanding his urges of putting them back together because of how well Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor played out of the gate. In this time, Paul Maurice was kind of asking Kyle Connor to help pick up both Wheeler and Scheifele, which is part of what he did. So we would have never heard that in the past. And that was another example of how some of the other pieces are starting to help the Jets. I mean, the biggest surprise for me tonight, Nikolai Ehlers 15-41. Nikolai Ehlers had 4 shots on goal, but Ehlers is a guy now the Jets are going to have to get going at some point here, right? Isn't he? Don't you agree?
Well, no, he'd had a couple goals recently, and the interesting part about it is when Paul Maurice talked about
scored
putting those
3 games in a row, but it's been a while now since that time, Sean.
Was it 3 games?
It's like
ago?
3 or 4 games.
Yeah, I mean it's not that long. I mean,
I'm not saying he's in a slump.
The NHL,
I'm just saying,
right? Like. Okay, here I'll address this. The interesting part about this is, to the point that you brought up before, it was the line from Paul Maurice today that Mark and Blake weren't going and they needed help too. So This was, we've talked about this in the past. We know, let's not address this as any other way. I think Paul Maurice kind of tried to massage the reason for putting Blake Wheeler on that line at first. Tonight, he just came out right and said it. We know, you and I knew that he was putting Blake Wheeler on that line and taking Svechnikov off that line to get Blake Wheeler going. But tonight, he outright said it. Mark and Blake needed help too. Those guys got put on a line with Kyle Connor tonight because they were trying to get those guys going. The rest of the lineup, Ken, what did he say? He said the reason that the lineup fell the way it did for the rest of the night was that he liked what he saw from Lowry with Nick Ehlers. And he said the rest of it just fell into place. So for those of you out there who thought that Pierre-Luc Dubois and Evgeny Svechnikov were getting reunited because there had been some chemistry there that anyone had seen, that wasn't it at all. It was
by default, is what he said.
It was by default.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you're getting Connor, Wheeler, and Mark Scheifele because you're trying to get Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler going by putting them with Kyle Connor, who is basically now the number one driver on this Winnipeg Jets team, or at least in the mind of Paul Maurice. And then he liked something about Nick Ehlers alongside Lowry and Stastny, and so that's why they go together. And Svechnikov just gets bumped up alongside that line by default. Andrew Kopp goes there as well. But that's the thing that kind of clashes, and you brought it up there, Ken, is the ice time for Nick Ehlers is not the ice time of someone that you're saying, I liked what I saw, let's run that line. It's quite the opposite. It kind of looks like Nick Ehlers got bumped out of the top 2 lines and has been put on the third line and is being used as a third line player.
So one part about that, I mean, I think that we know how much Paul Maurice values Paul Stastny and Adam Lowry. So I don't think this is a full-on demotion. And I do believe that he liked parts of what that line was able to do. To me, I think that, Paul Maurice kind of touched on Nikolai Ehlers maybe having a bit of a groin issue that he was dealing with about a week to 10 days ago. And to me, maybe that had more to do with the minutes, because the other part that we saw, Lowry's minutes were quite low. Right? I think that was...
you think that had anything to do with the initial goal?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. He only had 13:27, which is quite low for Adam Lowry. Anyways, it's interesting. Let's see where it goes from here. Yevgeny Svechnikov, nice redirection for the assist, but there were a couple of moments that would have had a coach kind of shaking his head, right? There was a penalty, and then there was a bit of a turnover that led to a penalty. So, hey, I'm not trying to be critical of the guy, but I mean, when we praise him for maybe needing to play more when things happen, that you get put under the same microscope. So I think that's he's a guy who's given everything that he's had, and as you've called it, it's found money for the Jets, and now it's up to him to kind of establish that consistency. If that's going to come with Pierre-Luc Dubois, that's important. I thought that Dubois, in the second period, I thought he was just an absolute beast again, an absolute horse, chances everywhere, winning puck battles, pushing people off again, using his speed.
Yeah, like if he plays that kind of game, whether he scores or not, he's a valuable player, right? Like that.
Yeah,
that's the
for
thing
sure.
about that, and you would say that about him. Yeah, his line isn't the line that pulled out, although he gets the third assist, on that.
Right, he made the play to get it to the top.
He's the guy who made the play, so he was creating tonight. He doesn't get on the score sheet, but he was creating. But I mean, if we take a look at what the first line did, their goals popped, but everything else, there was some issues there to be had with that first line. PLD didn't necessarily pop tonight on the score sheet, but his game tonight was a sustainable game for the majority of the game. I just wanted to touch on Leighton Janis, who's asking us to weigh in on our comments from the Hockey Night in Canada panel. We did that off the top of the show. Leighton, you're going to have to go back and we're not going to stop the chat and go back and tackle something that we did already. You can go back and grab that stuff. Although, Ken, did you weigh in on this yet? I handled this before you hopped onto the show, and I kind of led into my thing. But yeah, just your thoughts on both BX and Friedge kind of said that it was a little bit of DeMelo's fault. You kind of touched on this.
No, I did touch on it. Yeah.
Well, let's just move on from it.
Sure.
Power play, Ken. Let's get into the power play.
Yeah, it needs to be better. I think the one thing that I noticed, shift length wasn't. We've heard all about shift length and everything else. So that, Scheifele was out for too long during the major on one of the points, right? That was, you understand why you want to be out there, because they're trying to give her and they're trying to snap out of the funk. So, not enough shots, too cute. Zone entry's not good enough. It's a bit disjointed right now. That's just the facts. Yes, Pierre-Luc Dubois scored off the rush, window dressing goal, and an absolute beatdown. So I don't put a lot of stock in that. Again, it allows you to stop talking about it momentarily, but the power play, there is no semblance of the power play that was clicking along at third in the NHL. Right now, they're middle of the pack at best, and they need to be a lot better. I am all for trying different things, and we know the Jets had probably their best scoring chance of the entire power play of the season from Mark Scheifele on the first power play in Minnesota yesterday. Cam Talbot, and it's not that Scheifele hit him in the pillows. This is like a top 10 save of the year where he kicks his leg out on a really good shot that was labeled for the corner. But at the same time, the Jets need to do a way better job of a couple things. Puck movement needs to be way crisper, and they need to start getting more quality shots, like the one that they had from Scheifele. Otherwise, and it's tough to feel more confident when you're not rolling along. And in terms of Phillips, I'm not surprised Stastny's ice time is around that number. You got to consider the foot injury that he was dealing with, and they were playing back-to-back. So I'm not as surprised, and I don't think that number is going to be at that level for very long, as long as he doesn't suffer a setback of any kind. But in a back-to-back, for a 35-year-old coming off a bone bruise and a possible hairline fracture, I think that that wouldn't be something that I would be concerned with. One thing, the fourth line didn't play a ton. One really good scoring chance for Christian Vesalainen, and it was a ridiculous. This is one of those that, like Hellebuyck, Markstrom makes it look relatively easy, but I thought that shot was labeled, and you had to make a really good save. When the first look in real time, I thought, did it even get through? But then you saw that Markstrom made a really good save on it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving on. Let's shift gears, Sean. We're already almost 50 minutes in. You were at the Moose game today. What'd you see from David Gustafsson?
Well, I to me, he looks like he has the most NHL ready game. Like, I think that there's it's always interesting seeing things at the AHL level. Things are a little more direct. They're a little more hectic. It's hard for like skilled guys to stand out at that level because the passes. I had an interesting conversation with an NHL GM one time, and it was confirmed later by Paul Maurice, who talked about this. But it's really hard sometimes you can take a look at grinding type players and get an idea of how they're playing at the AHL level, because that's kind of what the AHL is. Whereas the skilled guys, it's harder to gauge where their game is at because they go down and they're the guys who play with flow, and when the pass is on their tape, they break to the net and they do all of these kind of really good things. Whereas that doesn't happen as much because the guys they're playing with can't hit them on the tape as much, and passes are behind them and they break things up. But it's interesting, and I'll bring this back to Paul Stastny. Paul Stastny tonight did what you and I have been talking about this Jets team needing to do, and you touched on it earlier, but this is what we had called for in this time. You got to get to the front of the net. You got to get some greasy goals, and you got to get those kind of goals where, like, the goalie's pad is out and the puck is there and your stick is there, and your stick needs to be stronger than the goalie's pad and get that puck in the net. And that's exactly what Paul Stastny did tonight. And I just thought to myself, boy, oh boy, is Paul Stastny, like, how valuable is he? And how unsurprising is it that when the Jets went through this little bit of a skid, that Paul Stastny is the guy out of the lineup? Like, I truly think that Paul Stastny is the heart of this Winnipeg Jets team. When it comes down to it, I do think he is the calm on this team. He's the guy who calls things out when they need to be said. He says the things that maybe sometimes other people are afraid or uncomfortable saying. He's calm when there's panic. And it doesn't surprise me that on a night where they break the goose egg and get back in the win column, that he plays a significant role in that. But to go back to David Gustafsson, you've been the guy driving the Gus bus for a long time. And I can see why. Like, he went out and was playing, and not only are you driving the Gus bus like you have been since the beginning of the year, but you kind of kept hammering home over this rough stretch of hockey for the Winnipeg Jets, which I'm not saying is over right now. But over that stretch of hockey, it's kind of the element that he brings to his game is exactly what the Jets needed. Someone who could get to the front of the net and drive and push. And that's what I saw from him. He played that kind of game, and it's not the kind of game that he's intending to play. That's just how he plays. It's just the way that he plays. He brings an element that I think the Winnipeg Jets, and we've talked about this in the past, I think the Jets, when things aren't going well, they have a tendency to be a perimeter team. Sometimes it works, like it did tonight, where they got some goals from the outside. Sometimes it doesn't. But he brings an element that I think the Jets quite often miss, and he just brings it naturally. So I'm sold with what you're saying. I think there's a place for him on this team. Saw Cole Perfetti. I'll be honest, I was watching the game. There's a lot of plays that he makes out there that are what's the line I used when I texted to you? There's a lot of those hope plays that I see him make where you're hoping for that it turns into offense rather than it, maybe being the right play. He still makes a lot of those plays, so I can understand why he's not up at the NHL level. But the other thing that you can see is he always seems to be in the right place at the right time. Had a goal. David Gustafsson set him up. I think it was Pagansky who did all the heavy lifting on that goal. But it's Cole Perfetti who's in the right spot, right there to tap it in. He doesn't miss those chances when he gets it. So you can clearly see his offensive instincts are there. He gets it. I saw some kind of stat about him being, I think it was second in the AHL right now in high danger chances or something like that. But you can see that it's there. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning about kind of hard to judge talent at that level. What I saw from him was a guy who, threw the puck in some situations that you could clearly see coaches would be like, you can't be doing that. You definitely can't do it at the NHL level. But you wonder how much of that has to do with the fact that he's throwing the puck to a spot where a really talented player would be jumping and breaking to. And if that's not exactly what he should be doing, and just the players around him may not be as cerebral as he is at that level. Ville Heinola, I thought he looked good. He didn't blow me away with his game. But the interesting part about it, Sandberg, who I thought was calm, took a penalty. But, I mean, Kovacevic, to me, is the guy who looks like he's got the most ready NHL game. I know that he's not the guy. I know that he's going to be number 3 in the depth books for that Winnipeg Jets team, and the way that the Jets have their defensive positions locked up, it's hard to see a path for him to anything but the press box at the NHL level, with Sandberg and Heinola ahead of him, and Stanley and DeMelo. I know there's chances they could move some guys in or out, but I'd said this, I sure do hope at some point that hockey fans get to see Kovacevic at the NHL level, because I think he's a future NHL player. I was impressed with him tonight, as I was during training camp. I see the same thing from him time in and time out. Big guy who plays the game the right way, doesn't cheat the game, had a goal tonight. It was an interesting time, interesting experience watching that tonight. What did you see out of Chaz Lucius?
Yeah, interesting game for sure. He had just been back. He had a thumb injury that had been keeping him out for a couple of weekends, so I really liked his game today. He's an super interesting player. He is speaking of cerebral, he's very, I would say in some ways, very similar to Cole Perfetti in terms of how he thinks the game. He's always around, like he has incredible anticipation. He's around the puck all the time, whether it's on his stick or he's in position to get a shot away. I liked a lot about his game. Much like Perfetti, I don't think that he's known as a burner. He's not like a hyper speed guy, but I mean, I don't think his skating will hurt him. But I mean, at the college level, you often see guys going 100 miles an hour. I think he's a guy who really thinks the game very well. Really good hands. He had an assist. He had a goal. He had a tap in on the 6-on-5. So here's a freshman player who is, much like Perfetti last year. He's running. He's a big option. He's in the line A Scheifele Ehlers spot on the power play on his one-timer side. He's out on the ice on a 6-on-5. That's where he got his goal. I really like. He's around the puck a lot. Like I said, not afraid to get involved. Bob Motzko flat out said to me, "Just this is a matter of it. This guy is going to be an absolute stud, but he's 18 years old. So when you're 18 years old and you're a freshman in college, you're going to have to put on a little bit of muscle. You're going to have to mature into your body type and all those things. And he's missed a lot of time the last couple of years because of injuries. So just a really upbeat kind of personality. He's really excited about the way the year has gone. I don't think it was because it was for Thanksgiving, but because of all the time that he's missed. One of the things he stood out for him and said he's really grateful to be in the lineup, to be playing, and for him to be playing at the University of Minnesota is a big deal. I mean, this is a Minnesota guy. When he played U18, he has had to move away from home. Now he's playing at home. His brother's committed to playing there next year. But I also will say this too, like this is not a Kyle Connor situation where Lucius will play 1 year and be gone. I think he's going to need another year for sure. And, the brother factor, much like Tucker Poolman staying the extra year so he could play with his brother Colton, that's part of it. But I don't think that Lucius is ready to jump into the pro level next year. Could he play for the Moose? Sure. But he's not a guy that like Kyle Connor is going to jump right into the pro game and start in the NHL or be in the NHL early. But he's a super high-end prospect, and I think he's super interesting to watch. I said there's some similarities with Perfetti, but the Jets don't really have a player like him. And I wouldn't use Phil Kessel just because he went to the University of Minnesota. He's not fast like Kessel, but he seems to kind of be in those areas, and he has that sort of shooter's mentality, but he also is a good passer. So
did I hear like a good explanation of him is that he's almost like a Mark Scheifele Kyle Connor hybrid?
A little bit, but I don't, not at that pace though. I don't think that he plays it with that level of speed. Like you have like Connor with the elite speed and Scheifele with the explosiveness. And again, maybe that will come. Again, this is a guy that's coming back from a serious leg injury. So I think maybe he has had that speed element in his game previously, but right now I would say he's more of a kind of average type of speed. Like I said, like Perfetti. I think that because he processes it so quickly, I don't think that skating will be an issue for him. And I think his skating will continue to get better as he matures and gets stronger. So I really was impressed by what I saw. Made a lot of things happen. There were a couple bobbles, and he had a really nice toe dragger that was blocked, and then he had a really nice chance on the power play that kind of rolled off his stick where it was kind of potential to do more. Like, he was great in the game, I thought, but there was the potential to be, even better. And that was the thing. Like Brad Schlossman from the Grand Forks Herald, the great beat writer, he covers. And again, I have trouble saying "Fighting Hawks" when the entire arena is chanting "Sioux" during the entire game. That was certainly fun to be back in the atmosphere at Ralph Engelstad Arena. I thought it was a fantastic game. But Brad had said, Lucius got an empty netter yesterday, but before that, man, he had a ton of scoring chances, a little bit snake-bitten around the net. So now he's scored in consecutive games. I think that'll put him up to 4 goals and 6 points in 10 games now. So almost a point-a-game player as a freshman. That's a solid start for a guy who missed a lot of time last year. And again, this is another guy like Perfetti. The Jets weren't expecting to fall to him at 17 in the draft. So, but I think he's more like, my biggest point would be, don't expect him to be a one-and-done type of player. I think he's a guy that's going to go back to the University of Minnesota and then potentially be a dominant force as a sophomore next year. But he's already having an impact on the team this year.
A couple things. I wanted to bring up a Cash Bally who says that you're the brains of the Kenny and Renny podcast, and I'm the brawn. A Cash, I get what you're trying to do here. It's nice that you're trying to be complimentary, but I don't think strength adds anything to a podcast. So it's a little bit of a backhander.
No, it does. It really
does. It's a little bit of a backhander. I mean, I can lift this up. Good for me. Good for me. Look at Renny is really bringing it on tonight's. You know what? I wanted to bring this up quick, Ken. I'm going to bring up Olympics, and then we're going to cut out. We've already gone quite a bit longer than we thought we were going to go tonight. But people are sticking around, so let's do it. It's one of those nights we'll do this. I wanted to
give the people what they want.
You bet. There's a really good interview with Rob Pizzo from CBC where he talks to Doug Armstrong about the Olympics. And so people should go check it out because there's something interesting. The most interesting thing I learned from that was Doug Armstrong saying what people don't get is this hot start that's happened. And when you think about it, we're thinking about players like Andrew Mangiapane and even Pierre-Luc Dubois. The NHL, or excuse me, the GMs of the Olympic teams, the NHL Olympic teams, had to submit a long list in October before the season started, or around the time the season started. They had to submit a long list of players, and they're only allowed to take players off that long list. So here's the deal, and I'd wanted to ask Mike Sullivan about it when he was in town, but we had to shoot something, Ken, and I wasn't able to talk to him. I wanted to ask if Andrew Kopp had been on that long list, but my guess, Ken, is Pierre-Luc Dubois was not on that long list. And Andrew Mangiapane, I don't think would have been on that long list. I think he was, man. He had
such a good time. He was so good at the Worlds last year.
Pierre-Luc Dubois?
Sure. No.
Sorry, Mangiapane. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may be right about that. But
I think he was the MVP of the tournament last year when they won gold. So I think Mangiapane is on it for sure.
Yeah, you're probably right. Corrected by Kenny. No wonder you're the brains of this podcast.
There you go.
Kenny.
But stick to being my bodyguard. Hey, there you go.
It's supposed to be me giving you a hard time, Ken. What's going on here?
Buddy.
Roles are reversing. Everything's getting out of whack here. But the one thing that people need to know, and like this conversation that people keep having, and I understand the conversation about people suggesting Pierre-Luc Dubois is playing his way onto Team Canada. Mark Scheifele is playing his way off. I don't know how long that long list was, and I don't know whether Pierre-Luc Dubois would have been on it or not. But Kenny, I mean, wouldn't you be surprised after the year he had last year if he was on that list? I'm not sure that he would have been, and it's something that we need to keep in mind. Now, a guy like Andrew Kopp, there's just, I mean, as deep as the States are, and they're deep, they're not as deep as Canada. Canada still has like sickening depth, to pick from on their roster. But I mean, Andrew Kopp, who's having a phenomenal year, there is a chance that everything we talk about him and the potential for what he could bring to that team, that he doesn't have a chance of making that team, or maybe I shouldn't say doesn't have a chance, but can't make that team because he didn't make the long list. Then again, he's a bit of a defensive specialist. He's a guy that you could think of that, may make the team for Team Canada, like a Sean Couturier type who can both score but play defense. Maybe he was on for one of those roles, but I just thought that we should have that conversation about that and let our audience know, because it's always part of the chat room. But the whole idea of a Pierre-Luc Dubois versus Mark Scheifele kind of square off to see who has the chance to make the Olympic team, I don't know, people. I don't think it exists because of that reason. Ken, do you have any thoughts on all that?
I think Kopp is on the long list, just based on the fact that he was in the World Junior program. He's in the, he played at the World Championship, I believe, again. So I think Kopp is on the list, and I don't. If he wasn't, I doubt that he would have reacted to my question to him on the Sunday, about having extra motivation with Sullivan on the other bench, the way that he did, if he had already known that he wasn't a possibility. So to me, I think that he's on it. In terms of Dubois, he did play for Canada at the Worlds as well at one point, but I know because it was such a tough year for him. I'm guessing there's I don't know what the percentage of it would be that he would not be on it. The only thing that we know for sure in terms of people that have been asked about was that Sam Girard from the Colorado Avalanche was not on the long list. So, but that has no impact on who might have been on the forwards list for us, right? I mean, that's one thing that we haven't really been able to determine. So, right now there's no doubt Pierre-Luc Dubois is outplaying Mark Scheifele. That's not news. That's a fact. Is it going to last? I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's why they play the game. I mean, we'll see how the year goes. Dubois is playing at a higher level. Mark Scheifele, needs to play better. I mean, I think that's fair to say. I think Mark would tell you that himself. Things have not gone as smoothly as he was anticipating. I'm not afraid to say it. I thought that Mark Scheifele, this was going to be the year that he had his offensive explosion. I mean, he'd been a point-a-game player or better for 5 consecutive seasons. I thought he was going to have a 100-point season. I did not anticipate him missing 5 games due to COVID. I did not anticipate him getting a Charlie horse against the New York Islanders. So right now that prediction is not looking good, and neither is my Ehlers for 40 looking good. But he's the kind of guy that can get hot and really get on a roll. And I'm also not here saying that Mark Scheifele isn't going to get it turned around. I expect Mark Scheifele to elevate his game and get back to the level that we have seen previously. But we'll that's up to him. But we'll see how she goes. But in terms of the Olympic debate, I think it's fantastic. I think that I hope that that's the other part too. We always talk about how the NBA is kind of, the NFL is a year-round deal. They drag the draft over 3 days and everything else. I think that why not make those long lists public, right? I mean, I understand why the teams wouldn't want to, but for interest in the game, you're totally watching the game differently, especially a game that maybe you may not have interest in otherwise, right? If you're thinking, oh man, that guy over in Columbus has it. What if he has a chance to make it? Maybe you're watching the game a little bit differently. So I would have loved to have seen those lists made available and see from there. But otherwise, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I don't know how many Jets will be on the team, but we know there's quite a few in consideration. One other quick thing that I want to say, and I'm not trying to dump on things, but Neil Pionk is going through a rough stretch. He's taken a number of strange penalties, and there looked like he's just not in sync right now for me. Anyways, I don't know what you think, but for me, I think that he needs to kind of get back, like take a breath, and kind of he seems like he's in that mode where he's trying to do a little bit too much, and it's leading to a number of different things. In terms of maybe not as crisp the exits and not as involved offensive. And that's the other thing, Sean. The Jets' defense has not been as involved in terms of getting up the ice in the play. And maybe that's because as you mentioned, you've said it a lot, maybe the pinching wasn't working and the F3 wasn't high enough. And maybe the Jets have said maybe tone it back a little bit. But that was one thing that we talked so much about in the first 15 games, is that how much offense the back end has been providing. And yes, I know Logan Stanley gets an assist today, but the Jets haven't had that second wave of offense that we've been seeing as often as we did in the first 15 compared to the last 6.
Well, I think, what, you picked up on that. And one thing that I thought was almost entirely missing from the game tonight, to go back to the idea of the good and the bad and where they are as far as rediscovering the blueprint that worked for them.
Right.
Their forecheck was near non-existent, I thought, tonight. Yes. There was a couple times that, they got the puck and then they showed a little bit of possession in there. But the idea that we've seen from the Winnipeg Jets, and we talked about it after the the Columbus game. I didn't get to see the second and third period. I was in the air of the Wild game, but the Jets, have basically, if they lose the puck, the game plan, the blueprint is to go get it back right now, not wait for the other team to bring it down and defend and turn over the puck and go back. Their idea is if they turn it over in the offensive zone, they want to take it back from the team in the offensive zone, and they throw everybody at it. And I was noticing, and I touched on this on the last one, maybe it's pointless to kind of say these kind of things. It's almost like you need to draw it up on the board, but they try to cut the puck in half and trap a player on the half wall. But what teams I've noticed consistently have been doing against them is when they trap that guy on the half wall, he just reverses it to the defenseman, and the defenseman throws it cross ice, and the Jets are caught with 4 players on that side of the ice, and it's an easy alleviation for the other team to get out of the zone. And I almost wonder tonight if it was like we are not playing that system right now, so let's just back off that system right now and keep our guys back and not get as involved. Or I wonder if it's an admission that system is not working and it's back to the drawing board. I would think, Ken, it's more likely the first one. But it did not seem tonight like they were trying to play that game at all. It seemed like their idea of forechecking and pinching and keeping the puck in the zone, it seemed like they were allowing Calgary to come out as much as they wanted. It looked like things were going in the third period. Maybe it was just one of those things where they looked and said, look, Connor Hellebuyck said he was going to get us out of this. He's playing like he's going to get us out of this. Let's just go back to the old style of the counter punch. Let's wait for them to make a mistake, pounce on it, put the puck in the back of the net, get our 2 points, and get the heck out of here. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to watch a little bit more closely now that you brought it up the other day. I didn't, I agree that forecheck has not been as effective or chaotic, creating as much chaos, if you will. But I'm not sure if it's a matter of the book is out on the Jets and teams have adjusted on their outlets and breakouts. But I mean, it's something we're going to watch as the weeks move along here. And yeah,
if people want an example of what I'm talking about, go look at that Columbus game and go look at the Pittsburgh game. It was on full display there. The Jets were trying to press and keep the puck in the zone, and both those teams did a really, really good job of alleviating the Jets' pressure by reversing the puck and taking it all the way across the ice. There's good examples of that. That's what I'm going to be watching for, because I think what happened now is this is the pattern I see moving forward, Ken, is that the Winnipeg Jets just needed to get off the schneid, right? And I know people are someone said it earlier in the chat, Ken, that it's very Sean Reynolds to talk about how disturbing a win is, right? But I will argue that in the past, I argued that some of their wins were disturbing before they headed into their big slump last year. And what I pointed out was I wasn't liking seeing the game that the Jets were having. And the Jets admitted later on, Paul Stastny admitted that they hadn't liked their game. So this is what I'm saying. And I think everyone here, if they sit down and they actually take a look at today's game, no one here is happy as you are for the Jets winning. No one is looking at that game, including Paul Maurice, who said as much, right, Ken, after this game. No one is looking at this game and saying, now that's how you go out and win a game. That's Winnipeg Jets hockey. No one's thinking that. They needed to get off the schneid here. I think there's a lot of happiness to be had that they did within that dressing room. You get a little bit of confidence. I thought they looked like a more confident team once they came back and tied that game up. Yeah, they didn't have everything going, but now what I think is this next game is interesting, because I think this next game against one of the worst teams in the league is going to be about reestablishing the blueprint, right, Ken? Trying to get back to what they were at. And that's going to be the important part of that game. I don't know how it's going to look. I think because there's going to be an attention to detail about executing that game, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a game where they go out and they don't necessarily kind of run the Coyotes out of the building, but win it, in a tight game, and Paul Maurice and the players come out and say, yeah, I know it didn't overly look pretty, but we like that game because that's what they'll be setting out to do. Or the kind of bounces will continue because of the confidence. If they go and they start reestablishing that blueprint, rediscover that blueprint that was working around the time they beat the Oilers 5-1, and then start cashing in a couple goals, and it could be one of those games where they have a little bit of a runaway and then end up, winning that game and really feeling good about their offense, and maybe kind of turning this skid around in 2 games, which is, I don't think anyone, or maybe some people do. I don't think, Ken, they've turned things around here. I think they're in danger of falling back into the tailspin. But I think if they can come out and have a really solid game where they execute their blueprint against a team like the Arizona Coyotes, that could be a quick, sharp turnaround, and they could get back to being that team that is climbing the standings rather than plummeting them.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we know that it's a quarter of the season, and there's a lot of season left. So I know we love to make sweeping observations about each and every single moment in every single game, and there are going to be ups and downs, and that's just the way it goes in the NHL. So, but yeah, that's the fun. That's why we're here. We're here to break it all down. We're not just here to say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, if the Jets have more troubling issues, we're going to talk about them, right? I mean, sure. That's what we're here for. But the big thing for the Jets today was that they showed some resolve. I mean, that's what they will look at. And moving forward, they're going to have to be better in a lot of areas. But sometimes when you show resolve, sometimes some of the other things kind of fall into line. And that's what the Jets are going to be trying to get themselves together. There should be a celebration, Sean, for all the people who said it was Sportsnet's fault that the Jets were struggling. There's a big win for the Jets on Sportsnet today. So
I found that it's funny how people perceive that kind of stuff. It's all about habits, right? Like TSN carries the majority of the game, and you wouldn't believe how often I've heard that line about, like, man, they always tank it on Sportsnet games when the Jets were at their best. And I'd said this, Ken, like I told the story about accidentally saying shutout to Hellebuyck on the bench during a stretch because they could not lose on hometown hockey. They'd get on hometown hockey and just absolutely dominate. And they did that for a number of years. So traditionally, they've done really well on Sportsnet. But you know what, Ken?
One other thing before we shut it down.
Well, there you go.
The year the Jets went to the conference final, all of the playoff games were on Sportsnet, and I was not working there at that time. So, and as we know, as much as we'd like to think that there's some big sway from the media has no impact on the outcome. We just get to talk about it and break it all down, which is the beautiful part.
Yeah, you bet.
Another big win for the Ice tonight, it looks like.
Yeah. Do you have tickets to give away?
We'll do it on Monday, I think. I think the weekend is off. I don't think they're playing tomorrow. Unless I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I will get on the case. But I think that they played Medicine Hat tonight. I'm not sure. Now you put me on the spot, and I'm not 100% sure.
Well, here, let me look at it quick. Make one final point about something. Bring it. Hey, you're the brains of this operation. Why don't you think of something really interesting to talk about while I bring up the schedule?
Well, it's been a super fun week of planes, trains, and automobiles, as some folks already know. For me, this was my first road trip since August of 2020 when I was at the Edmonton bubble. But big difference from that time, I was 10 days in one place. You took one flight to Edmonton, and then you're there in that same hotel. This week, there was a drive to Grand Forks, a flight to Minneapolis, to Columbus, back to Minneapolis, back to Grand Forks. But got to watch, 3 fun hockey games. Got to watch another on TV. Lots of fun shows. We had a tremendous dinner with, unifying all kinds of forces. We had TSN people. We had Sportsnet people. A dinner for 10 in Columbus, which was a lot of fun. And like I said, it was fun to wrap up a really enjoyable week at the Ralph Engelstad Arena here, watching a really fun environment. I mean, first time to watch Jake Sanderson as well, who's going to have a big role at the World Juniors coming up here as well. So 2 things here, Kenny. Troy Stevens is the kind of guy who goes out on a couple's date and likes to bring up the other person's ex. How's your ex doing? You guys were such a great couple. Come on, Troy, give me a break here. What do you think you're doing? And then the other thing is that the Ice do play tomorrow. So if you want to go see that game, Ken's got 4 tickets, 2 sets of tickets. I mean,
to give away. So what we've been doing is you can either email him or you can text him.
You can't text me. You can DM me or email me.
You can DM Ken on Twitter is the way that this is working.
If you have the ability to text me, fire away, but we're not putting that out there quite yet.
There we go.
You have enough places where you can air your grievances with me.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. I have started messaging back and forth with a ton of people from the Ken and Renny show. So if you've reached out to Ken and you do have that, however way it's best for you to get to him, we tried doing it by having people leave comments here in YouTube. What we found is they just never go back and check the YouTube comments, so it doesn't work. But this way, if you direct message Ken on Twitter, or if you get a hold of him on his email or some way that you check that he's going to give you a response, do that and go see those ice. We had Sammy on. Sammy Cosentino, Sammy the Scarf, as you all know him. He keeps hammering it home time and time again. If you like hockey, you are seeing one of the best junior hockey teams we've seen in a long time that very well could be hoisting the Memorial Cup at the end of the year. Go watch this team. We're giving you free tickets. Go check it out. It's going to be phenomenal stuff. And last thing I guess we should say, people keep asking me, and I guess it's because he drinks beers on the show, but people always want to know how our night goes. People always text me and send me messages. How'd the night go with Sammy after you guys got off the show? It went brilliantly. Everybody, Kenny and myself and the Sportsnet crew and Sammy and John Bartlett, great guy, all had a really, really great time afterwards. We're going to keep the stories with us, though. Ken, phenomenal job. Safe travels on the way home. Looking forward to you getting back, and I will see you face-to-face on Monday. Chat room, you were absolutely phenomenal today. 1:30 in the morning, around 1 o'clock, we had I think we were up to around 250 people watching the show at that time. You guys are just the absolute best, as always. Thanks for contributing to the show. We love spending time with you. That's why we're here. We want it to keep going. So come see us on Monday and get those requests in for those tickets to Kenny. That's stuff you shouldn't be missing that. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. You have a great night.